Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating story that's been unfolding in India for the last 10 years, corporate social responsibility, or CSR. We're going to break down exactly where thousands of crores from big companies have actually gone, and trust me, some of the trends are pretty surprising. Let's get right into it. So this is the big question, right? With more than 30 different sectors to choose from, where did all that corporate money really end up? You might think the answer is all over the place, but what the data shows is a story of incredible focus. And there you have it. This one chart pretty much says it all. The overwhelming majority of CSR funding, year in and year out, has been funneled into just three main areas: education, healthcare, and rural development. You can think of these as the bedrock, the foundational pillars for national growth, and companies have clearly voted with their wallets. Everything else, literally everything, has to squeeze into that tiny little slice left over. Okay, so that's the big picture. Now let's unpack how we got here. We're going on a journey through a full decade of data to see who the consistent giants are, who the surprising newcomers are, and what fascinating stories are hiding just beneath the surface. First up, let's talk about those big three. They're not just the largest, which is impressive enough. The story here is their absolutely massive growth over the past decade, and we'll start with the biggest of them all. So let's rewind the clock. Back in the financial year 2014-15, the education sector pulled in just under 2,600 crore rupees. Now, that's a huge number, for sure, but get this, that was just the starting line. Okay, now, fast forward to today, that number has absolutely exploded. We're not talking a little jump. We're talking about over 12,000 crore rupees. The sheer scale of that leap is just incredible. So to put that in perspective, we are looking at a 4.7 times increase. That makes education not just the biggest sector for CSR spending, but also the fastest growing of these established giants. It's in a league of its own. Now, healthcare, the second giant, has a very similar story. It grew by an amazing 3.8 times. But what's really telling here is that massive spike you see during the COVID years. It's a perfect example of how this money can pivot, to respond to a massive national crisis in real time. But you know what? The giants aren't the whole story. Some of the most interesting things we found in the data are happening in the smaller sectors. We're talking about areas that have seen absolutely explosive growth, hinting at some really big shifts in what companies are prioritizing. Just look at these two. First, environmental sustainability got a huge injection of funding in the 2021-22 period. And then, just 1 year later, livelihood enhancement, which is all about projects for job skills and creating economic opportunity. It had its own massive jump. These aren't slow, gradual climbs. These are dramatic, game-changing leaps. But as big as those jumps are, they're nothing. And I mean nothing compared to the most shocking growth story we found hiding in the data, coming from a sector that started off as a very small player. Get ready for this. Animal welfare. Over the last 10 years, funding for this sector has multiplied by a factor of 30, a 30x increase. Can you believe that? It's just a powerful reminder of how an area that wasn't a huge priority can suddenly become a massive focus. So all these spikes and shifts, they're not just random noise. If we play detective for a minute and look at the weird patterns, the anomalies, even the declines, they can tell us so much about the changing CSR landscape in India. Okay, this is one of my favorite finds. At first glance, you see a massive drop in funding for projects with no classification, the not mentioned category. And you might think, wow, that looks like a failure. But it's the exact opposite. This is a huge win for transparency. It means companies are getting way better at actually reporting and classifying what they're spending their money on. Let's zoom in on one of those spikes we mentioned earlier. You can see it right here with environmental sustainability. The funding was chugging along at about 1,000 crores, and then bam, in a single year, it more than doubled to over 2,400 crores before settling in at that new higher level. That's not an accident. That's a deliberate, rapid shift in priorities. And it wasn't a one-time thing either. The art and culture sector saw something very similar happen. A massive one-year injection of over 900 crores, which then dropped right back down. These kinds of anomalies often point to huge one-off flagship projects that can temporarily but dramatically change the funding landscape. All right, so we've just time-traveled through a decade of CSR data. We've seen the giants, the breakout stars, the strange spikes. So what's the bottom line? Let's boil it all down to the key takeaways.
So this is what the field looks like right now. No surprise, education and healthcare are still way out in front. But look who's now in the top 5. Environmental sustainability and livelihood enhancement, those breakout stars we talked about, have really cemented their place as major priorities.
So, if you're going to remember anything from all this, let it be these 4 things. 1. 3 giants, education, health, and rural development, are the absolute bedrock of CSR spending. 2. Growth has been dramatic pretty much everywhere. 3. The data itself is getting better, cleaner, and more transparent, which is great. And 4. Never, ever count out the little guys, because a small sector can become the next big thing overnight. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. It's pretty clear, right? CSR isn't just some side project anymore. It's a massive force that's actively shaping India's development. So, as corporate priorities continue to evolve, the real question is, what's next? Which sector is going to be the next to have that explosive 30x growth and become the breakout star of the coming decade? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.